Welcome, everyone. Good evening. If you're just joining, welcome to today's study session. So we're just waiting for others to join. The class was scheduled for 8:30, so we're allowing about 5 minutes. It's 8:34 now. So at exactly 8:35, we'll kick off. We have about 12 people on the call now. We don't want to take your time. Thank you for joining. My name is Balogun Abidemi, Director of Events. The president is not available at this time, but he will join us in the course of this session. This is 8:35 now. I think it's about to, so I think we can kick off now. So I have Amarachi on the call, and she's taking us on vendor assessment. She's projected a slide already, so I'll just hand over to her to commence. Amarachi, over to you.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
And
evening. Good evening.
so you're welcome to today's session, which we'll be discussing on the technique vendor assessment. Um, so we'll be discussing vendor assessment, and then let's look at the learning objectives. By the end of this session, we'll um, be able to define vendor assessment as per Babok Fashion 3. At the end, we'll also be able to identify vendor assessment criteria, identify knowledge areas involved. We'll also be able to learn how to apply vendor assessment process um, in our different establishments, in our different activities that we are doing. And also we have some CBAP style questions which we'll practice with, and I'm sure it will give us more insight into the topic of today. So we'll start with what is vendor assessment. And according to Babok Fashion 3, it defined vendor assessment as a technique used to evaluate a vendor's ability to meet commitments for delivering products and services consistently and reliably. Please, before I continue, please confirm you can hear me loud and clear.
I can hear you. If you can hear her, you can just drop an emoji, drop a reaction. Let's see. Yeah, thank you very much, Lyle. Where are the others? Where are the others? Okay, yes, we can hear you. I can see messages. Okay, so I think you're good from
All right,
Busayo too. So
thank you.
Amarachi, you can go on.
Okay,
Yes.
so moving forward on what is vendor assessment. Vendor assessment is mostly conducted during one of the knowledge area, the solution evaluation. It's usually done to ensure that the vendor is reliable and that the products and services which is going to be offered will meet the organization's expectations and requirements. So if we're assessing a vendor, we want to make sure that this vendor will be able to satisfy our business needs. It will be able to meet all our expectation, or at most of it, if not all. And so that is why vendor assessment matters. It matters because it helps to reduce procurement risk. We don't want engaging a vendor that is not reliable. Today we want to buy something, or we want a particular product, we want a system, an ERP system being set in place, and then one thing or the other, the person is giving stories tomorrow. We want to be able to confirm that vendor capability. Is he able to deliver? Are they able to deliver? Are they able to do what we want? Are they going to be able to meet our business needs? The solutions they are going to provide, does it meet our requirements? Is it going to fulfill all what we want? And at the end of it, also, does it support objective decision making? That is why vendor assessment matters. The decision to choose a vendor, the criteria that we would use, is it objective? Is it objective? The process we are going to use to assess this vendor, are we going to be able to say it's objective enough? We'll be able to check the different criteria, put 2 or 3 vendors side by side and give an objective assessment of those vendors. That is why vendor assessment matters. Next, we'll be discussing on the vendor assessment criteria. We have different vendor assessment criteria. The functional fit. When we talk about the functional fit, we are looking at, is this vendor able to align with our functional requirements? Whatever the vendor is providing, is it in line with the functional requirements of our business needs? Will it be able, with the features is the vendor providing, is it complete? Is it going to cover all that we need? So let's assume we are getting a solution, or we want to set up a system, right? So that's configurability or customization of that application the vendor is providing. Is it something that can easily be done? All the functional requirements we need on that application, is it in place? Can this vendor deliver on those functional requirements? We'll also be looking at the technical fit, because these are the different criteria that the vendor can be assessed upon. If you're getting an AIP to integrate with your existing system, will that vendor be able to integrate it seamlessly without having system downtime, or without it messing up the already existing solution that we have? Is there opportunity to scale up? Is the scalability and the performance benchmark such that okay, so this application is carrying 90 users. Can we later on, by the time we've gotten more people to onboard, will we be able to scale up to 120? Will we be able to scale up to cover more volume? What is the security and compliance standard of the solution that the vendor will be selling to us, or will be implementing for us? So under the technical fit, those are the things we'll be looking at. Then, not to forget the pricing and licensing as well. There are some solutions that the vendor would just give you the licensing model, but you don't have the ownership. There are some that there'll be the ownership cost for you to have full control over it. Those are things that should be also assessed depending on the kind of solution that is being depending on the kind of solution that is being purchased, or the kind of solution that the business wants to obtain. We're also looking at vendor viability. That should not be also taken lightly. What is the vendor's reputation, the market reputation, the references? One of the things that you'll be assessing, or the company will be assessing as well, is that vendor, is he well known in the market? What if he's well known? What is he known for? Is he known to meet high standards? What kind of standards are their products on? So let's assume if what we are buying requires ISO standards, that vendor, do they have the necessary requirements for that as well? Can they deliver on such capability as well? Financial stability of the vendor. You're looking at the product roadmap and innovation. So you're looking, sometimes when there is a case where okay, to onboard a vendor, some even go as far as getting proof of concept, or even visit the site or the location of the vendor as well. Is this vendor who he says he is, or who she says she is, or this company well known enough? What is their reputation out there? What is their stand out there? Are they known for just imagine you want to set up something that requires a compliance standard, and then you're using a company that is undergoing fraudulent charges and all that as well. That could or might, let me use the word might, that might affect the ability of that vendor to deliver at the same time again. Then another criteria we can assess the vendor on is implementation, right? What is the deployment timeline? What is the time it will take for this vendor to be able to finish um, finish putting up this solution? What is the timeline for the vendor to deliver this product or service? So the company's timeline will also determine as well the kind of vendor they will pick at the end of the day, because the at the end, let's remember that we are trying to meet a business need. We're trying to achieve a business goal. So that will guide the different way in which these vendors will be assessed. This vendor's timeline, is it so far away and it will make me miss my deadline? Just imagine you're trying to CBN just pulled out one, just gave out one regulation, and then you're trying to update your system to meet up that deadline, that regulatory deadline, and then there is a you've you can't do it in house and you're employing a third party, a vendor to do that for you. But then the vendor is giving you a timeline beyond CBN's deadline. Of course, that's right. That timeline would not work. The company will be looking for the one that will be able to fit in the timeline they have. So those are the things we also look out for. We're also looking out for the migration and data conversion support, the existing information, the existing data we have when we upgrade. Hope we will not be looking for the previous data. It will be easy for us to migrate the data we have to this new application, or we'll be able to migrate whatever it is we have currently on this solution or on this product to the next one without having any hitch at all. And also another criteria to be looking out for is the training and change management as well when assessing the vendor. Still, I would also like to point out at the end of every vendor assessment, if it does not meet the business needs, then I would say it's not a positive vendor assessment, because at the end of the day, the business goals are not achieved, then it wouldn't be a good vendor assessment being done. Then the next criteria would also take is the support and SLA, the service level agreement. What do they have? Do they have after sales support? Are they the ones that when there is issue tomorrow, we can easily call upon them and then they would be able to offer support? The SLA that we have with them, are they going to be able to meet up the maintenance and upgrade frequency of the product or the solution they are selling to us? How often does it happen? How often will it occur? And put this back also in mind with the pricing and licensing as well, depending on the kind of solution you're getting. This will also influence the support and SLA commitments that you'll be assessing on each of the vendor. So we'll be moving on to the next one, knowledge areas and tasks involved. So according to Babok, right? So the vendor assessment is a technique, but inside that technique, there are different knowledge areas that technique can be relevant to. So the core knowledge area for this vendor assessment is the solution evaluation. There is a business need, and there is need for that business to get a product or service that will enable them meet their business goals. So going to be evaluating whether the vendor solution meets the business need. We'll be assessing the limitations and also recommend. That is the main work of the BA. So the BA is not to tell them what to buy, or is not to give them the approval, but rather to evaluate, assess, and recommend. So if there is any risk also tied to the solution, it is also the BA's work to put them down. So you measure the solution being uh, provided by the vendor, you analyze, you assess the solution limitations, you recommend actions. Those are the relevant tasks that are tied to this solution evaluation. And one key knowledge area also that is um, relevant to vendor assessment is the strategy analysis. Under the strategy analysis, you'll be analyzing current state as well as defining future state. Now, the current state is the current situation at hand, right? This is what is happening in the business. This is what the business is currently facing. This is what we want. This is where we are going to. You define the future state as well, assess the risks that are involved in it, and then you're able to establish baselines. You're able to define the needs that the vendor must satisfy. You'll be able to carry out risk assessment of the vendor solutions. These are all the things that the business analyst would be performing for the organization. And is also vendor analysis is also supported by the requirement analysis and design definition knowledge area. Under this knowledge area, you will be defining the requirements of the vendor solution and measure them against the company's business need as well. You'll be identifying solution options that will be including the vendors, and the relevant tasks are the specify and model requirements, define solution options under BABOK 7.3 and 7.5. Here you've done your you've analyzed, you've done your strategy analysis, and you've come up with the different requirements that you want the vendor to satisfy. While you're defining that requirements, one other key thing is stakeholder engagement. While this is going on, don't forget the stakeholder engagement, because they are the ones that would be needing this solution that we are trying to get. So business analysis, planning, and monitoring would not be left out. Your stakeholder engagement, the governance, who is the sponsor, who are the people that will be approving for it, for the solution we are trying to get. An effective stakeholder engagement would lead to an efficient requirements gathering. So if you're able to plan your stakeholder engagement properly, all the requirements that vendor will be, all the requirements of the solution rather that will be expecting that vendor to provide would be properly covered. And then the governance as well should not be left out. The management that will be approving. Sometimes some people have a committee some companies actually have a committee that when you do this assessment, you give to them, they make the final solution and the final selections. So that governance also would also be taken into consideration. Then another important knowledge area that guides vendor assessment is the elicitation and collaboration. One thing or one task the business analyst to be doing is you're gathering vendor information. You'll be getting the RFIs, requests for information, or sometimes when the when you are sure of the vendor, you can get your request for proposals as well from these vendors. So you're conducting elicitation, you're getting information or proposals from the vendors. When you get the information or the proposals from the vendors, you'll be confirming the results of those information or proposals you've received. You'll be conducting demos, stakeholders interview to evaluate solutions. So depending on the kind of solution that is being purchased, if it's a product, if it's a service, that would also guide the kind of vendor information that would be required or that would be elicited at this point in time. So next is the techniques used in vendor assessment. We have the decision analysis. So I think, is it 2 trainings ago, the speaker talked about weighted criteria matrix. That is also something that's also a technique that is also important in vendor assessment. The weighted criteria matrix or weighted scoring matrix, some call it weighted scoring matrix, that is used to score vendors objectively across defined dimensions. Remember the dimensions we mentioned earlier in our vendor assessment, the technical fit, the capability, all those ones which we've mentioned earlier, the functional fit, technical fit, all this. Now, under the decision analysis using the weighted scoring metrics, we'll be able to measure those, score those vendors objectively across those dimensions, and then the ones with the highest score would we would say is objectively our best fit for the solution we want to buy. Or you do the SWOT analysis, you assess the vendor strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. We can also use the risk analysis and management. Here, the business analyst is expected to identify, assess, and plan responses to risk from vendor selection. Risk management is important as well, or risk analysis and management is important, because if you notice something that is not right with the vendor, it's your prerogative to also put it down, put that risk down. Is it that this vendor is giving an SLA that, let's say the agreement is you deliver this in 90 days, but then the vendor is saying, no, I can't deliver this in 90 days, it's 120 days. And that is against what the company wants. But then the company is feeling that, well, that's the best vendor they want to select, and you feel is a risk. Please put it down as well. And or let's say this vendor doesn't have an after sales support, but then there is a risk of just imagine you're migrating from one application to another, and then the vendor is saying, no, it's just one of they won't be available for any hitches that might arise later. Of course, that is a risk, because it's a migration and there are bound to be hitches, but the ability of that vendor to be able to offer swift solution would be a good assessment also. Then next, we'll look at the document analysis. I mentioned the RFI earlier. You review RFIs, the request for information or request for proposal responses, the vendor proposals, contracts, and SLA documents. So depending on the kind of product or service being required or being bought. So that would also determine the type of document analysis. Some would also be interviews and surveys. The business analyst is expected to elicit needs from stakeholders, gather vendor reference feedback. So interviews and surveys is also a technique that can be used in vendor assessment. We have the benchmarking. You compare vendor capabilities against industry best practices and competitors. We have proof of concept. Validate vendor solution against real business scenarios before commitment. This is mostly required if you're going for a digital solution. Is sometimes you expect the vendor to do a demo to even see how it will fit into what you want. So if I'm looking at, let's say I'm trying to get um, I'm trying to get an ERP, or I'm trying to even move a legacy system to a new system. I'm trying to migrate things, right? Now, it would be nice for me to see what that new system is about. Is it going to capture all the things I had in that other application or in that other system? So that proof of concept is like the vendor being able to show how the new system is going to look like, so that it will guide my as me making my assessment as well. Because just the vendor writing it down at this point would not be enough in a document. It requires a demonstration sometimes. Also, another technique used in vendor assessment is the business cases. Formalize cost, benefit, and justification for vendor investment. So when these vendors, when we get response from these vendors as well, you do the cost benefit analysis. What this vendor is preferring, is it something that would be our best fit, or is it something that even if we're going to spend more, what are we going to gain from it? Or it's just at the end of the day, it's not necessary at all. So your cost benefit analysis would also show the different, how would I put it now? Will show the different, um, sorry, please, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Okay, sorry, the call is interrupting. All right, sorry about that. So the business case is also a technique the vendor would use in assessing a vendor as well. Now we'll be going to the vendor assessment process. So we'll begin with defining the business need, just like I mentioned earlier. The goal of carrying out a vendor assessment is to be able to meet a business need, is to be able to meet a business goal. So, and to be able to do that, you should be able to define the business need, identify the gap. So what is the issue at the moment? What is the gap? How does this, how will this gap affect our activities? What am I trying to achieve? What is the company trying to achieve? What is that goal? What is that objective the company is trying to achieve? Now, when we've identified the gap, we'll then align it with our current and future state. So for this is where we are currently, and this is where we are going to. Then you develop the RFIs and the RFP. So RFI, request for information, is mostly used where you don't have information about the vendor. You don't have much information. So you're reaching out to the various vendors to ask, please, this is what can you offer? Tell me about what you're able to offer. This is what my needs are. Tell me about your company, what you're able to offer. Let me know if it aligns with what I'm looking for and all that. So request for information is mostly used where the vendor is probably not so known. Meanwhile, the request for proposal is more of like, oh, this now you've drafted all your requirements, you've documented all your requirements, you have everything intact. Now you're now requesting for proposals from those vendors. You've told them what you want, and they send their proposals, and then you're beginning to get feedback from those vendors. They are sending in their proposals, and then you're now evaluating and scoring the vendors based on those proposals they've sent. So you're developing the RFIs, you're developing the RFPs next, and then you do your market research as well. You can identify potential vendors, conduct benchmarking as well, depending on the business needs. You evaluate response. You evaluate response. You can apply the weighted scoring matrix, or you use the decision analysis technique to evaluate the responses you'll be getting from the different vendors. It could also be a proof of concept, demo, site visit also, to also assess the vendor. So imagine if what you are, I want to try to put in where you would need a site visit, for example now. So let's say you're getting, let's even say you want a vendor to be providing food. Okay, let's use something as simple as food for your staffs, right? You want to employ a vendor who will be making food for your staff, and then you don't want your staff, of course, to start complaining of food poisoning, and then they start missing work and all that. And remember, the reason why you're even engaging this vendor in the first place is because, let's say, around where your company is, there is no place where the staff could easily get food. That is something that is affecting the business, and then staff begin to use the company's time to go to look for where to get food and all that, and then you're trying to fill that gap. So a site visit will be appropriate at this point in time, because you want to go and see where that vendor is even making that food, making the food that the vendor will be bringing to the canteen in the office building. Is it sanitary enough? Do they have the right? Do they have the right health? Will I say? Well, it's necessary for them to have. It's just that here we don't take it serious. Different tests, right? That they usually do for caterers and all that. Even for staff, some canteens do that for staff that they hire. Is this something they take serious as well? So when you visit that caterer that you're trying to onboard, and you check out the facility that the person is using, it will tell you the way in which this vendor takes health care or health check serious, and then if it will eventually uh, affect your staff or not. So that is a scenario actually that could warrant a site visit. Then if you're getting a digital solution, you might need a demo or a proof of concept to assess the vendor, to know if whatever the vendor is offering meets your requirements as well, if it's even close to what you envisioned that the vendor would provide, and if it will match or meet your business goal. Another thing is the risk assessment. When you identify the different vendors, you also look at the risk, the inherent risk in those goals or the risks that might crystallize when these vendors are carrying out the activities. So, like the one I mentioned now for the canteen. Now, let's say, remember you're trying to get food for your staff, but then the location of the food vendor is far off, is far away. Your company is located in, let's say, in Aja, and then the person is coming all the way from Mowe. That's very far off. And then you get to hear traffic, you get to hear rain this, rain that, and then at a specific time which you've set for maybe breakfast or lunch, the vendor is not available, and then this is eating into your operating hours. That is a risk also. So that is something that could be documented as well when assessing the vendor. So risk assessment is also important. What are the inherent risks? What are the things that could go wrong? What are the things that that might happen when this is business, while trying to meet these business needs? Then take note, like I said earlier, the business analyst is not to approve. You recommend and you report your findings. So the last step for the vendor assessment product is the recommend and report. You prepare your recommendations with trade-offs. You present to the decision makers, the approving authorities. So when making your recommendations, please state all there is to state. You show your objective analysis of the different vendors, the risk associated, the alternatives where applicable as well. So all this is carefully documented and passed on to the decision-making authorities, who would eventually give their approval or final selection. So at this point, I would want us to discuss. So let's look at this scenario where a bank needs AML software, anti-money laundering software. And now you have two vendors. You compare vendor A and vendor B. Vendor A is offering a low-cost solution but weak support. Meanwhile, vendor B is offering a higher cost but a strong compliance. Remember, the software you are trying to get is to meet your anti-money laundering business needs. Now, if you are the one, which of the vendor would you prefer and why? So I would like us to discuss on this in the next 2 minutes. If you have an answer, please let me know. Abidemi would call my attention to it. The floor is open to us. Let's discuss. Let's see if we're even following to know how would you select this vendor? What will you be looking at? What do you want to, how would you select which either vendor A or vendor B, taking note of the business needs that we are trying to achieve? Are we there? Hello? Please, if there is anything happening in the background, I won't be seeing it. So Abidemi, if you're there, please call my attention to it. Thank you.
Okay, let me come in if no one wants to talk. Thank you for the beautiful session so far. So can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so the case study is a bank needs AML software, compare vendor A, low cost, weak support. Vendor B, high cost, strong compliance. So the question is, which is preferable and why? For me, it's vendor B. Yes, the cost may be high in the short term, but the penalty or the impact of the cost, if you face a regulatory sanction for not being compliant, will far outweigh the high cost we are looking at the first at the initial investment. And speaking from experience, 9 years ago, in one of my operations in Africa, we had a vendor that bypassed, let me say, where it wasn't compliant. Let me just keep it brief like that. But so that cost us a very substantial amount and even reputational damage that it took us about 3.5 years to rebuild. And sometimes we just look at the monetary value. Reputational damage, when you convert it to monetary value, is far a lot, because you have to do a lot to rebuild the image. And that was what we did for us to be able to rebuild our image. And apart from that, we were not able to carry out any operations for 6 years within that geographical location. So the cost of investment may be high for high cost, but that strong compliance makes it a very viable and better option. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Taiwo, for that explanation. I think
Abidemi, where is the
is
professor coming from now?
so you were able to give us a real life scenario, and we appreciate that. Amarachi, I don't know if you're still on the call. I think she dropped off. Okay, she's here. Amarachi, are you still with us?
Can you hear me now?
Amarachi?
Yes, please. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. So go ahead,
Okay,
please.
my network went off, but I was able to
Oh,
hear Tyler to an extent. Did another person make contribution?
not yet. We're waiting for you to join.
Okay, thank you. But is there another person willing to contribute?
Yeah, I saw a hand up. I think the hand has gone down now. So if you have any, okay, so Oladipo, you can go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. My name is Oladipo Adeoko. Yes, so I also what I wanted to say, I think just like you rightly said, Prof has already mentioned it. When it comes to stuff that is or requirements that is regulatory, cost is not even considered anymore. So the benchmark provided by the regulator is what the institution or firm wants to know that the vendor can provide. So a good BA would ensure that those requirements or those checklists are strongly met before they share their recommendation to maybe executive management. I remember in one of the companies I worked, we were trying to pioneer something for the insurance company, like a new product, and we needed to get vendors. And we saw some Nigerian vendors whom, have the solution, but they just like you have here, they don't really have the support in case we go live. If we have issues, they will not be able to support us. But we had to go for the foreign software based on recommendation, right? Because they were the OEM one. They could tweak the system if required. They could make adjustments. So considering all the needs that we require from our vendor, they ticked all those boxes. So there was no need to be biased or sentimental. We had to go for the vendor that ticked all the boxes in terms of what NICOM requires. So that was how we made that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Taiwo. And yes, both of you really hit the nail on the head. The
If I
main
can also
focus.
add to it, Amarachi,
Please go ahead.
that strong compliance is really interesting because the cost of initial investment is like insurance. When you have insurance and you don't have any need to use that insurance, you will not know, or you may not really value the benefit, or sorry, the importance of that insurance until there is a problem. And an example is if you have been driving. I've been driving for more than 20 years. I've never had any accident. I've never had any reason to use my insurance. But I still do the insurance because on the job, I have seen how insurance have saved us. So that compliance sometimes is not only when you violate, but you might have a case was there was a vendor, the job has been done. But they didn't take safety precautions. 2 years after, because of political wind hunt or whatever I can call it, in that particular country, then they went back to check all the jobs they've done and started auditing it and saw that, okay, in this place, they did not follow the safety guidelines and they gave them sanctions. This is live scenarios, not textbook. Sanctions, imagine you have done the job, you have collected the money, everybody is happy, you have left and somebody went back to check. So the lesson from that is when they were doing the job, because there was no crisis, there was no incident, everybody was happy. And they didn't take note of the consequence of not complying with the safety guidelines. But 2 years after, somebody went to dig it out and call them out for it. And they paid more than their profit, almost all their capital, all because they refuse to or they neglect compliance. So that strong compliance is, to be honest, the importance of choosing this option cannot be overemphasized. And thank you for the session, Amarachi. Thank you.
Thank you, Taiwo. And you've said it all. The business goal here is the compliance, the anti-money laundering requirements, which is a compliance requirement. And that should not be something you want to jeopardize. So if you're going for low cost and weak support, then your business aim should not be meeting anti-money laundering solution at all. So, but the second one is higher cost and strong compliance. So if that is your aim, just like the example Taiwo gave, if that aim is not achieved, if you don't get that compliance requirement solved, you're going to be spending more. So that cost you even thought you're saving at the beginning will be lost later. So for every solution we are trying to solve or we are trying to meet, it should be tied to the business goal. Let's not forget that. So if I'm trying to solve a business goal, meeting compliance needs, that business goal should meet that compliance need. That should be the first thing I should be thinking about. And when I'm doing my decision analysis, that should even be the top of whatever criteria I'm going to be using to assess the vendor, which vendor is able to offer the best fit for this criteria that I am looking for. So we'll also be looking at one of the methods in which we able to assess a vendor. We talked about the weighted criteria score. So this thing is blocking my screen. Okay, so for the weighted scoring criteria, we look at the different criteria, the functional fit, the technical fit, total cost of ownership, depending on the kind of solution we are buying, the vendor viability, implementation, support, and all that. So you can choose the kind of criteria you want and define it how you want it. And then you assign a weight to it based on your requirement. Remember, you've done your requirements and you, just like the one we just looked at now, our topmost need is a compliance need. So that compliance need, if I'm scoring based on it, will be my highest, will carry the highest weight. That will carry the highest weight, while the others would carry a lower weight compared to that. So you also weight your the vendors based on the different criteria. You also score on a scale of 1 to 5 each vendor. So in this particular situation, vendor A has 4 points on functional fit, 3 on technical fit, 5 on total cost of ownership, and all that. By the time you now multiply the score by the weight, it will give you the weighted score. And that weighted score is what we are going to be using to assess the different vendors. At the end of this scoring criteria, vendor A had a total score of 3.9, vendor B had 3.55, vendor C also had 3.9. Now, if you're going to choose, you say it's between vendor A and vendor C, right? So when making such assessments, we might have ties like this. So when the assessment is tied, that shows that we need further information, we need further analysis. So those other kind of analysis that we can use to also assess this vendor, we can now do those qualitative analysis, or we can get do the proof of concept. Is it something that would require a prototype? We would then begin to also ask, I need further information, I need this, I need that from that vendor as well. If you need further information, you can go back to the vendor and get, or if it's something you want to use other analysis, other assessment criteria as well, you can begin to now expand. This is where, if you feel you need further analysis, because like in this one now is a tie. If there is no tie, you could say, okay, I want to go for the highest, the one with the highest score. But even at that, if you're not still convinced, the different assessment criteria which we mentioned earlier, you can still probe further. It's something that you're looking for the best fit. You're looking for the best option, and you want you have the business need at the back of your head, at the back of your mind. You have the business goal. Always tie it to the business goal. Always tie it to the business need, what the business want to achieve. If you've done your analysis and it's still not okay, you're still not convinced, or you're still not satisfied, always go further, do further analysis, use the different criteria as well to look at it. So we have some practice questions put together, and I would also make this interactive. I won't be answering the question. So the first one is, which factor is most critical when assessing a regulated software vendor? Most critical when assessing a regulated software vendor. Price or compliance, capability, brand popularity, office location. Which do you feel is the most appropriate? If possible, you can as well tell me why. I would appreciate that. Please, Abidemi, please let me know if there are responses.
All right. In the chat box, I have a couple of responses. I have a lot of B's. That's compliance capability. I don't know if anyone wants to explain reason why. I have Layo, I have Tubosun, Busayo. They dropped B in the comment section. So if you
Compliance
want to
capability. What
compliance
factor
Please,
is
capability.
most critical?
do you mind telling me why?
Yeah, this is Taiwo speaking. So I pick B because look, software vendor compliance again comes into play. If the price is fine or the price is low, it doesn't matter if it's not compliant. And software, as it sounds, it seems to be intangible, but the power of software. I work in ICT industry and I know for a non-compatible software, what it can lead to. So for instance, if you have an API where you are trying to make two systems talk to themselves and you have a low standard software, that can it can lead to loss of millions of dollars. So that compatibility is very key. Brand popularity, yeah, there are a lot of brand popularity. If a vendor, a brand is very popular, and the extent of that popularity will be the extent of damage if there is an issue. Office location. Office location is just for me. It's branding. We want to belong. My office is on the island now, so what is your turnout per year? What are you generating in revenue? Although office location, jokes apart, so an extent can make you to be within the axis or corridor of power. I'll keep it short like that. So compliance seems to be the best for me for the reason I stated. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Taiwo. And let's take note that the key word here is assessing a regulated software vendor. So if your aim is a regulated software vendor, of course, you should be looking at compliance capability. And just like Taiwo has stated, the failure to comply to that regulation and that regulatory requirement could result to so many legal cases, legal fines, even the company's reputation would be at stake as well, because you wouldn't want to be known as a company that defrauds its customers. And just like Taiwo has pointed out severally, compliance is a non-negotiable requirement. You don't, even though the vendor is cheap, the vendor is popular, if it's not compliant, if they don't have that, if what they're offering does not have that compliance capability, and you're assessing a regulated software vendor, there is no need engaging. Well, I wouldn't say there's no need engaging. Those are the things you would put in your documentation while assessing the vendor. And those are the risks you would also point out, right? That this vendor does not have, is not compliant to be able to render this solution. And so the correct answer is B. So we'll go to the next question. A business analyst is scoring vendors. Which technique best supports objective comparison? A, brainstorming, B, mind mapping, C, observation, D, weighted scoring matrix. So Abidemi, you're
Keep the
my
answers
eye.
coming. I can see 2 Ds already. Okay, 3 Ds, 4 Ds.
Okay, I
So,
joined 5G.
okay, thank you very much. So that's weighted scoring metrics. No one is going for B or C or A. We need a divergent opinion. I think everyone is going with D.
All right, thank you. We're talking about objective comparison. If you're doing brainstorming, that is not an objective comparison. Mind mapping, you're trying to gather different information. If you see where a police is trying to solve a puzzle, you have different type of different information gathered here, there, all around all around. That is not an just picture that, and of course you won't call that an objective comparison. Imagine having that for different the different vendors you're assessing. Observation can be biased as well, so it's not an objective comparison as well. So but rather the weighted scoring matrix is something that is objective, because you already have a standard criteria that you're judging the different vendors with, the different fits you're scoring them on, as well as you have your scale as well, your 1 to 5 scale, you have your weight as well, and then you begin to score these vendors based on what they said they can offer, how they said they can offer it, what they want to offer. All by the time you score them based on what they had sent to you, of course you're now making an objective comparison. You're not doing that based on your own observation or based on your own thinking. It is based on documents provided for you, what the vendor has put in the proposals that were sent, and what the vendor has said, or during interview that the vendor has said that this is what he or she would provide. This is what, or they had sent, depending on the documents they sent. You've reviewed the document, you've scored the vendor based on what the vendor said he or she would be able to provide. So the weighted scoring matrix is a technique that best supports objective comparison. The key word here being objective. And so the answer, just like everybody has pointed out, is D. So we'll go to the next question. Vendor A is cheapest but lacks SLA. clarity, the service level agreement clarity. What is the best BA action? So as a BA, the vendor A has found out that vendor A is cheap, but then you also find out that this vendor A, this SLA that the person is setting, it might have K-leg. What would you do? A, will you just ignore and just select? Will you select immediately? B, ignore the SLA issue. C, escalate risk in assessment report. D, just remove all vendors. What will be your best action?
Answers are dropping already. So I have C from Oladipo. I have C from Layo. C from Tubosun. And C is escalate risk in assessment reports. I have C also from Busayo.
Is anybody willing to give reason for the answer?
Okay, so from the people I've mentioned, who is willing to give us a reason why they are going with C, or a reason why they've chosen C as a preferred option? Oladipo. Okay, Oladipo, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you once again. So, laying on the previous example I gave regarding when we're selecting vendors, when we're trying to make a decision for an insurance company. So, what we realized was that the local vendor was more of a reseller. So, the agreements in terms of the vendor that was an OEM approach methodology. So it was part of what we recommended. Formed our recommendation, highlighting the weakness of the local vendor to help management make their decisions. So the risk was communicated as part of the report that we shared to executive management so that they would make their decision from our findings. Thank you.
Thank you, Oladipo. Although I didn't hear you clearly, I don't know if it's my network or yours. Abidemi, was it the same with you? Sorry, I don't know if it's my network. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Amarachi.
Okay. Did you get Oladipo clearly? Maybe you could assist with what he said. I didn't hear him. His net, it was breaking at my end.
Okay. Oladipo, is this something you can just two buses had this up. Oladipo, just do a recap and then I'll take Tubosun.
Okay, thank you. So I mentioned that in the example I shared earlier, where we had to make decision on vendors, we realized that the local vendor had a sketchy support approach. It wasn't clear. But the foreign vendor had a clear, as an OEM, they had a clear support structure in terms of resolution times, how they will respond to us, escalation channels, and all that. So, if we wanted to make changes to the system, they were clear on how we communicate to them. So, we also highlighted the strengths and weaknesses of the two vendors as part of our recommendation to executive management so that they will make their decision. So that risk was highlighted in our report to executive management. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's clear now. There's somebody else, right?
Yes. Good evening. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, Tuboso, I can hear you. Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, yes. Okay, so for my answer was also C, which is escalate risk in assessment report. Simply because for the question that was asked, the key word there is lack SLA clarity. So definitely there's already a very important criteria in, that's supposed to help the decision that the owner was supposed to make. So the best I would do was just to evaluate my risk and see if with cheap solution is the SLA what is the weight of poor SLA on in this matter, and also because we don't have the results for other vendors. So I think the easiest I would choose from the options I have here would be to evaluate the risk and see if with for SLA I can still go with vendor A, and if not, I would take other actions. But removing all vendors is not an option because we don't know what the result criteria for other vendors are. So selecting immediately will be putting the cart before the horse, rushing more like rushing towards the answer, rushing towards the goal without um, doing proper evaluation. So basically, is evaluate risk in assessment report. That was the reason for my answer based on the question.
Thank you so much, Tuboso. And you're both right. The answer is escalate risk in assessment reports. Remember, the duty of the BA is to identify the risk and clearly communicate them as well. So expected to identify and report the risk in the assessment reports. So quickly, we'll take the fourth question. Among these options, approved budget, only vendor shortlist ranking, business case charter, scope model, which of this is an output of vendor assessment? So when the analyst has carried out assessment, which of these documents would be an output? Is it the budget, approved budget? Is it the vendor shortlist ranking? Is it the business case charter or scope model? Abidemi, once more, you're my eyes and ears.
So I have B. I have B here. So I have B from Abidemi, B from Layo, Oladipo, Tubosun, and B is vendor shortlist ranking.
Okay. So, and that's correct. The output of vendor assessment is the vendor shortlist ranking. So you've assessed the different vendors, you've done your comparative evaluation, you've ranked the vendors, or you've scored the vendors, or you've done your SWOT analysis, and then you have a final assessment assessment results. So one of which can be the vendor shortlist ranking. So it's not approved budget, it's not business case charter, it's not scope model. And lastly, this should be a bonus question. In BABOK, vendor assessment is classified as what? Is it a competency level? Is it a knowledge area? Is it a technique? Is it a perspective? I think this is the very first thing, which is the topic of today.
I have C from Layo, Ibiyemi. I have C from Oladipo. Uh, so I have C from Abigail. So, and C is technique.
All right. Thank you. And the correct answer is C. Yes, vendor assessment is one of Babok's technique, and it can be used across different knowledge area. So thank you so much for your cooperations in the practice question. And let's not forget that vendor assessment, just like we just answered in the last question, is a Babok technique that is used across different knowledge area activities, primarily the solution evaluation. And this assessment is supported by the strategy analysis and the RADD. Now, let's not also forget that the BA's role is to define criteria. Remember, we said the BA's role is to define the criteria, facilitate the process, deliver a well-reasoned recommendation, well-documented vendor shortlist ranking, well-documented well-documented output, and the BA should support evaluation and not the final procurement approval. The governance body would do that. The stakeholder management and governance are critical success factor in vendor selection. And always, just like we stated earlier also, always document vendor-related risk and trade-offs, and not just the winning option or the one that what we think is the best. Always document everything, the risk, the threats, the opportunities, the different fits, everything that is needed to make the final decision should be documented. And and at the end of the day, the business analyst can be able to confidently say he or she has done a good vendor assessment for the company. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Amarachi. Let's please appreciate Amarachi. Drop all the emojis. Clap for Amarachi. Thank you, thank you. And thank you for taking our time to share with us on this topic, vendor assessment. You've actually really done justice to the topic. I'm sure we've been able to learn a thing or two. So until next time when we gather again for another study session, I want to say thank you for making our time to be here, and enjoy the rest of your day. Good night, everyone. Bye.
Good night.